During the spring season of the year 1003 AD, 9 Native Americans were at peace in surroundings of nature, sleeping under their covered canoes in wilderness silence. Suddenly, they were awakened with a start. A group of strange pale men with shiny weapons appeared. They captured and killed all of these Native American men except one. The survivor ran back to his village, where he alerted his community about the horrific assault. On this day, 2 cultures that inhabited different continents with no prior knowledge of the other made their first encounter. The Viking desire to settle new lands had no limits other than conventional means. From their homelands, they looked westward, establishing themselves in Iceland around 874 AD. Eric the Red settled Greenland around 985 AD, giving the region that name to entice settlers. There, they would establish 2 main settlements. Then, during 986 AD, Bjarni Herjolfsson spotted land further west after drifting off course from his intended destination of Greenland. However, he did not disembark and explore this new land. The word of his new sighting spread over time, eventually reaching the ears of an explorer named Leif Erikson. In 1000 AD, 15 years after Bjarni's sighting, Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, visited this new world with 35 men. During his explorations, places like Helluland, possibly Baffin Island, Markland, possibly Labrador, and Vinland, possibly Newfoundland, were visited on his voyage. There were no encounters with Native Americans, and they returned to Greenland after spending the winter season. It would be 3 years later that another expedition visited this land, led by Torvald Erikson, brother of Leif Erikson. It was this group of Vikings, led by Torvald Erikson, who attacked these 9 Native Americans in 1003 AD. These innocent victims were probably from either the Beothuk people, ancestors of the Algonquin, or Thule ancestors of the Inuit. The Norsemen referred to these Native Americans as Skraeling. It is assumed Vikings gave Native Americans and Inuit in Greenland this name because of the dried animal pelts they wore. When the expected counterattack arrived, these Vikings were waiting aboard their beach ships. By the time these Native Americans ended their siege, the Vikings had lost their leader, Torvald, who was fatally struck by an arrow. After burning him in this strange new land, they returned to the Viking establishment founded by Leif Erikson just a few years before. After spending the winter season there, they returned to Greenland. Nevertheless, this was not the last of Viking visits to North America. A few years later, Thorfinn Karlsefni reached Vinland with 3 ships and over 150 people. The following spring, Native Americans came upon their location, in Vinland. When they motioned a desire to trade for the shiny weapons of these Vikings, they were denied because of strict orders from Thorfinn. Instead, the Vikings did offer to trade milk from their livestock and red cloth. The Native Americans seemed to appreciate drinking this strange beverage and traded their animal pelts to gain milk and cloth. Later, a number of Native Americans with more pelts came to trade. What happened next has conflicting accounts, though according to one version of events, a Norse bull came loose from the woods, frightening the Native Americans. These Native Americans quickly left in their boats, though it would not be the last time the Vikings would see them. Days or weeks later, they returned to attack the Vikings. The Norsemen fled to the forest for a more defensible position, where they killed a number of Native Americans while enduring a couple of casualties themselves. These Vikings spent the winter season in Vinland. The following spring, 3 years after first arriving, they departed for Greenland. These accounts were based on information from the saga of the Greenlanders and the saga of Eric the Red. These sagas are thought to have been written in the early 1200s and are known as the Vinland sagas. Nevertheless, we know these sagas are not completely correct and are used to provide a point of reference for events on which little evidence exists. Fortunately, Lance Aux Meadows in Newfoundland is one settlement that proves Vikings reached North America. It was located in 1960 by Helga E.T. Anstey Ingstad from Norway and is the only confirmed Norse site in North America. During their time in North America, Vikings may have launched excursions as far south as the states of New York and Maine from this settlement in Newfoundland. Recently, the Viking presence in Newfoundland was given further attention. With the aid of tree rings from woodcut at the Lance Aux Meadows Viking settlement, scientists are now confident enough to add a date, 1021, for this settlement. They were able to arrive at that date by using a solar storm which took place in 992 AD as a reference point, along with the aid of an atmospheric radiocarbon signal. Knowing the effect of the solar storm on tree rings, they calculated the number of rings from that solar event to determine the year 1021 AD. These researchers state that even the wood itself was felled by metal objects. Furthermore, these scientists state their findings are not a suggestion that 1021 AD was the only time the Vikings were in Newfoundland. They suggest this was likely one stage in their habitation, and that Vikings could have been here years before or years after 1021 AD. What it does show is that the former assumption of 1000 AD could also be just a stage and perhaps not the initial contact Vikings had with North America. So, why did the Vikings, a feared people who made their presence felt throughout large parts of Europe, abandon Unsolved Meadows after approximately 20 years? Various researchers suggest, along with the sagas, that strong resistance from their encounters with Native Americans played a large role. The sagas also suggest Viking settlers were concerned for their safety and freedom with the Native Americans, as well as internal conflicts. However, researchers today are trying to discover more evidence-based answers. At this time, medieval to modern will ask these questions as potential possibilities. Could North America have been too remote for sustainability, since even Viking settlements on Greenland were not self-sufficient? Perhaps there was a natural event like lack of food in a harsh and challenging environment, which made living there impractical? Or, since Vikings were always looking to explore new lands, perhaps the Unsolved Meadows site was intended as a base for further journeys, and not a permanent community? Thinking outside a convention, medieval to modern has another theory. Could be that not all the Viking settlers returned to Greenland, continuing their stay in other undiscovered locations? In addition, could these possibly remaining settlers have assimilated into the native North American population over time? This may be similar to a theory on another famous abandoned mystery settlement in North America, the Lost Colony on Roanoke Island in North Carolina. The second Roanoke colony, known as the Lost Colony, was established in 1587 AD. Its settlers suddenly disappeared from their fortified site by 1590, with the true cause of their departure still a mystery to this day, though there is speculation that the approximately 120 inhabitants assimilated with a nearby native population. Some information to support this claim has appeared in writings from as early as the year 1605, but it is only one of various theories. As research evolves, evidence may prove more spectacular findings on the Viking presence in contact with Native Americans. Various other sites may remain hidden at present or evidence lost to the ravages of time. And what about related mysteries? For instance, we still do not know what happened to the 1121 AD expedition by the Bishop of Greenland, Erik Knutson, which tried to reach the Vinland destination in North America. Were they successful? And where exactly was Vinland, since the descriptions and sagas are not a certain match to Unsolved Meadows, especially with evidence of butternut wood found at that site? Those trees do not grow that far north, the closest location being nearly 500 miles south in New Brunswick or in the St. Lawrence River Valley. Recently, there has been increasing interest in the possibility that contact between Vikings and Native Americans could have gone beyond landing and meeting in North America. Considering a study by Spanish and Icelandic researchers, a Native American woman may have accompanied the Vikings to Iceland on their return over 1,000 years ago. They say it is not conclusive evidence, though it definitely is proof of interaction. Through a genetic analysis of 80 people from 4 families residing in Iceland, they discovered a DNA type normally found in Native Americans or East Asians. This DNA was introduced into their gene pool through a woman. It is important to state that these families descend from ancestors living in southern Iceland between 1710 to 1740 AD. Since Iceland at that time was isolated from outside contact, the distinct possibility is that this woman was introduced into the population by Vikings. In addition, this lineage of DNA is one of the few related to North American settlement over 14,000 years ago. Today, there is insufficient information to show a direct genetic linkage between Native Americans and Icelanders. This is due to no current Native North American group possessing a matching genetic variation to that found in these Icelandic families after 1,000 years. Therefore, the Native American group, this DNA originated from remains a mystery. Thank you for supporting us at Medieval to Modern. Please be sure to watch our next episode, or one shown at the end of this video. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and spread the word about this channel so we can create more exciting content. I wish you good tidings as we remember that sharing knowledge has been a noble deed throughout the ages.